Wait. That's the sound of my AC. If you can hear it, I'm so sorry about that. So today we're going to be talking about frequency separation. So what is frequency separation? In case you guys don't know, frequency separation is a method of removing the textures from the colors of the photos. That way, when you edit the texture, you just touch the texture, and when you edit the color, that's all you worry about. In the iPad Pro, we're gonna be using a program like I talked about before called Affinityphoto. So we're gonna look at if it's different when we pull out the photos, when you produce the photos coming out of the iPad, if they're different or if they're lower res in comparison to photos that are coming out of something like Adobe Photoshop. So this is just a shade on Adobe Photoshop. That way we could see if we could get the Photoshop on the iPad. This is what Affinityphoto looks like. This is their version of Camera Raw that you would use in Lightroom. So in this version of Camera Raw, you could go in and do basic adjustments, etc. But this is not why we're here. So I'm just gonna speed through this, and then we're gonna go into the frequency separation when it comes to Affinityphoto. So I'm gonna develop. All right. So now that we're in Affinityphoto in their develop setting, this is their version of what you would consider Adobe Photoshop to be like. So we're gonna look at this photo. Of course, we could do some basic adjustments here, change the color a little bit, but like I said, I'm just gonna go through the frequency separation portion of it. So in Affinityphoto, frequency separation is actually very, very easy. It's not even it's not a complex process at all. It's super easy. It's literally just duplicating your layers and pressing a button, and it does it for you. So this is what we're gonna do, right? We have our layer button here. We have the background layer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to click on the three little bars in Affinityphoto right here, and I'm going to duplicate my background layer. So with the background layer duplicated, now I could separate the frequencies of that background layer. So that background layer, we're going to extract the texture from the colors. So what you're going to do is click that little, I don't know what this is, like I don't know what it is. So you're going to click that little button that's under the color adjustments. We're going to scroll all the way down, and it literally says frequency separation. Frequency separation. When you click it, now this is where you have a little bit of control. You want to, this is your, so to the right you have your low frequency layer, and to your left you have your texture layer. So what you want to do is make sure that you don't see any texture on your color layer, which is your low frequency, and you make sure that you see enough texture on your high frequency layer. So this is at 2.4 tolerance, 50%, and this seems to be fine. I'm gonna click apply. Once I click apply, you're gonna go in and you're gonna see your low frequency and your high frequency is already created for you. So what you want to do, and this is my process, you don't have to follow it. I like to duplicate my low frequency, that way I could work on the duplication and not mess up with the original layer, because if you do, you're gonna have to go back and it might mess up the whole thing. So we're gonna go to the high frequency and we're gonna deselect it. And once you do that, you're gonna see that the photo becomes very, very blurry. That's not a bad thing. That just means that this is your color layer you're gonna be working on. And once that's created, you select the low frequency layer. I go to my my brushes on the side over there, if you can see on the screen, and I'm gonna choose my healing brush. And this is exactly the same thing I would do if I was using Adobe Photoshop, and you'll see in a few. So once I select my once you select your healing brush, you're gonna adjust your width. I like to adjust it so it could be the size of, say, sometimes Affinity glitches like that. Alright, so once you select your healing brush, you want to set the width to the size of I want to say a makeup brush, right? This size is good. It depends on the side of the face that you're going to be working with. My opacity is usually at around 70, 75, flows at 8, hardness is at 5. Let's go. So frequency separation is this. When you reach the color, what you want to do is press one portion of the face where you want to bring that color to the other part of the face. That way you could make it homogeneous. Remember that word I had problem with? That nailed it this time. Alright, So I'm gonna speed up. If you understand what I'm doing right now, you could just follow along with your own photo, but what I'm gonna be doing is really blending the colors together and make sure that everything looks good. So I'm gonna speed up through that right now. So now that we're done with the color layer, the low frequencies, I'm gonna show you guys my layers again, and we're gonna select the high frequency so we can enable it. And if you want to see what we did, this is a before and after. So I'm gonna delete the layer that was underneath the low frequency, which the low frequency that we worked on, which is the original low frequency layer. And now all we have is the layer that we worked on. And I'm gonna do the same for the high frequency. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate it. And I know it looks a little weird now, but don't worry about that. I'm gonna deselect the low frequency, that way I could just see my textures. And instead of using the healing brush this time, we're gonna use the patch tool. So I'm gonna use the patch tool. Make sure I'm working on the right layer. And what you do with the patch tool is you select whatever you wanna patch, drag it, and that's it. We might have to go back to our low frequency to fix the color a little bit again, but that's not gonna be a big deal. So what I'm gonna do right now is just patch. I know it doesn't look like it's doing anything, but trust me, it's working. So I'm just gonna go ahead and patch anything that I find undesirable on the model's face. It's just aesthetics. And I'm gonna speed up through that way I could do the same thing that I showed you guys when I did the low frequency. We're just gonna speed up and we'll show you the final product. But essentially, if you're following along, this is exactly what you would do on that layer as well. So after a fair bit of adjustment, as you can see here on Affinity Photos, all these layers, we ended up with this. This is the final photo. If you could see, there's all the changes we made. We started out with this, and we ended up with that. This is we started out with that, and we ended up with this, and this is what the photo looks like. Okay, all right. So now we're gonna go into our computer to edit the same photo using Photoshop and see how it comes out. Alright, so now we have our image open in Camera Raw in Adobe Photoshop. As you can see, this is, like I said, Camera Raw. We could do the same basic adjustments that we were going to do, except a little bit more, because of course Adobe has way more functionalities. Unless, of course, I don't know Affinity 100% yet, and I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure Adobe has way more functionalities. But that's not why we're here. We're here to do frequency separation. So, I'm just going to open the image. So now that we're in Adobe Photoshop, the first thing I'm gonna do, of course, is do the frequency separation for you guys. But the first thing I'm gonna do, of course, is the same thing that I did with Affinityphoto, which means I'm gonna duplicate my backdrop. So we're gonna click on the background image and hit Control J if you're on a Windows PC, and if you're not on a PC, I think it's Command J on the MacBook. So now that we've duplicated our backdrop, we're going to create a duplicate of that. I'm going to name this one low, and I'm going to name the one on top of it high. So low frequency, high frequency. So what we're going to do with the low frequency is we're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. As you could already tell, the difference here is that we have to do all the steps ourselves when we're in Adobe Photoshop, because Affinity itself, it just does it for you. So now I could adjust my blur just like Affinity. So this is what we would akin to adjusting the low frequency. So we're adjusting our blur, that way textures are barely visible. So I'm okay with this. I'm gonna go to high frequency. In high frequency, we're gonna do image, apply image, And what you want to do is select the low frequency layer under layer. Keep the channels as sRGB. We're going to go to subtract instead of multiply. And then we're going to leave our scale at 2, and we're going to leave the offset at 128. This math was calculated by someone way smarter than me. I'm not sure how they got to it, but it's always 2 and 128. Leave your setting like this if you want to do the if we want to create a high frequency layer in Photoshop. So 2 128, opacity 100. Blending mode is at subtract, layers low, and your channels as sRGB. Click OK, and that's going to create it. But now all you can see is a gray screen. So what we're going to do is go to our layer. We're going to change it from normal to linear light. And this is how you do the frequency separation action in Adobe Photoshop. So if I were to edit this image as well, the first thing I'm going to do is exactly what I did for Affinityphoto, excuse me. I'm going to duplicate my low frequency layer. I'm going to deselect the high frequency and work on my low frequency. So we're going to click on the image here, zoom into the face. We're going to go to our brushes and we're going to select the healing brush as well, the same way. And I'm going to do the same exact thing, which is selecting part of the face that I feel like have a good color for where it is and blending it on the other part of the face. So we're going to do that. It's very therapeutic really when you're doing this kind of edit. However, I think the first thing I noticed is that I would prefer editing with the Apple Pencil rather than the mouse because I don't have a Wacom table. But if you do have a Wacom table, a Wacom tablet, I'm sorry, not table. If you do have a Wacom tablet, you're good to go. So we're going to keep doing this until we're satisfied. So I'm going to speed up through that again and show you guys the final result. I'm going to show you guys the final result of the low frequency before we go into the high frequency. Alright, so now that we're done with our low frequency layer, we're going to work on our high frequency, which is just enabling the high frequency. And I'm going to remove some of the textures that I find undesirable, just like I did for the Affinityphoto, and then we're going to move on from that. So that's it. We're done with the edits. I don't know which one you prefer, but me, I'm not sure. The photo that I edited with Affinityphoto, it looks great. The photo that was edited with Adobe Photoshop, it looks great as well. So you tell me which one you prefer, and you tell me if you could spot a difference. I think in the end, the difference really comes down to the Apple Pencil and the ease of use of the iPad for me. I would rather edit my photos using the iPad, especially if these photos are going to go on Instagram. So for these photos, what I ended up doing was importing them into Lightroom, applying the same preset to them, and cropping them the exact same way so I could post them. If you like these photos, you can go to my Instagram right now and check them out and let me know which one you prefer. So this is it for me. Like I said, in the end, it's ease of use and the ease of use of the Apple Pencil. But I would rather use my iPad Pro in Affinityphoto to edit my photos right now because it's very easy for me and I've gotten used to using the Apple Pencil. That's it for this video. On the next video, I have a special announcement for you guys. It has to do with something that you guys have been waiting for a while from me, especially if you follow me, and I will give a special announcement to that. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'll see you guys in another video.